Thanks for watching part 3 of my RDS Journey series of videos, the final installment in the series. Now I have time-stamped this video. You're going to have to look down below in the description, click on whatever you want to watch. If you don't have time to watch the entire thing, there was just no real way to pack all of the stuff I want to talk about on this gun without time stamping because it's a little bit lengthy. I apologize for that, but I hope you understand and you bear with me. 1,000 rounds and 1,000 dry fires. Those are my qualifications for sharing my information with you all. I'm just a regular guy, a civilian. I'm not Leo, military, present, or former. But I have put a lot of rounds and a lot of dry practice into this setup over the last couple of weeks. So much so, my right shoulder was extremely sore and irritated, as well as my trigger finger, which still feels a little fat. So there's my qualifications for you all. Just a regular guy sharing my thoughts on this setup with you. Quickly for review, why an RDS on a handgun? As I mentioned before, I'm not getting any younger, my eyesight's not getting any better. While I'm not old and my eyes aren't terrible, it's still true. The inevitable is going to happen. My eyes are not going to get better, and I'm not going to get any younger unless somebody out there has discovered the fountain of youth. So why a Trijicon RMR? Because in my opinion, it's the best on the market. And I don't just mean that because it's the most expensive. Training class after training class, if you read forums and you consult with people who have been, several red dots do break down in classes, many of which are on the very first day. The RMRs hold up better than anything out there. These are trusted by SOCOM, Special Operations Command. I'm not talking about regular Army where they're more concerned about budgets than they should be sometimes. Our guys deserve the best equipment, and our special operators, special forces definitely enjoy that more than our regular Army. So they trust the Trijicon RMR, as well as guys like Aaron Cowan and other names that I've mentioned before. These things hold up really, really well under abuse. Can they break? Absolutely. They're battery powered electronics. They can break and they can go bad, but there are give and take with it. There are backup plans such as sights and the aiming methods that I talked about in the second video, but the RMR was my choice. Buy once, cry once. Go ahead and pay for it. Couldn't be happier with it. I'm extremely pleased. Let's face it, guys, anybody can put an inexpensive dot. You can buy knockoffs of these and you can throw it on a gun. They're like 35 bucks on Amazon. You can buy a knockoff RMR, throw it on a gun, take a sweet picture or 2 or 5, post it on Instagram, and make a killing. People make money doing that stuff. I want one though that's going to work, and I don't care if it's any of the other brands that are out there. I want one that is going to function and has been proven to function under the worst conditions. We can't pick situations. Now, I've talked before in the past about torture tests for guns and that type of thing. I'm not a huge fan. Guns are pretty durable overall. In addition, civilians don't face the same situations as military or Leos. However, an optic on a gun being able to be dropped on concrete from shoulder height is absolutely something that could happen. And dropping a gun is not going to affect it as much as an optic would be affected dropping it from 6 feet or shoulder height onto concrete. So that's why I put stock in the torture test that Aaron Cowan has done on the RMR, all right? So if you're thinking about a dot on a pistol, I will say this: prepare to be humbled. It will take your ego, it'll take your feelings of being a superior shooter, and it will make them about the size of a grape. Now, I would consider myself to be slightly above average as a shooter. I'm nothing great, but when I threw this on the 19 and I started shooting with it, I had second thoughts. Just like everybody else who's put a dot on their pistol, and they started shooting it and they're going, I'm not sure I like this thing. But I told you all I was going to give it a fair opportunity, a fair shot, and I have. I would say in a couple of weeks, 1,000 rounds and 1,000 dry runs are definitely fair. And I'm happy I did. It would be easy to put a few boxes of ammunition through one of these and say, it's not for me, I'm done, no way. Especially somebody that's shot for maybe 15, 20, 25 years. So, but it's intuitive. Once you get the feel and you understand the benefits, I can press this gun out in a defensive situation. I can be threat focused. I also maintain my horizon so that if anybody else in my peripheral is coming up, I can move the gun around. I'm not dialed in on that front sight, and I really, really understand it now. It makes complete sense. Another benefit is this. I do wear bifocals now and then. When I have to read something up close, my eyes are good from a far distance, but it's at intermediate distance where sometimes I need a little help, especially in low light. When I put my glasses on though, unless I look through my bifocal, or if I look through my bifocals, it was blurry. If I look through the top, it was blurry because they're not designed for that distance. With the dot, I can put them on, press the gun out, and I can see it just fine. So that's something for you who wear glasses out there, especially a prescription to be similar to mine, to consider. Don't worry about the glasses screwing it up. You can still see that dot, whereas the front sight, rear sight, it was always blurry when I had my glasses and I just couldn't get a good sight picture. It's an exceptional diagnostics tool. What this showed me was I had some grip issues, and I'll humble myself right now and tell you guys, my grip wasn't as good as I thought it was until I put the dot out there, and I'm seeing that dot go all over the place, especially under recoil. I would fire this gun fast, and that dot's going all over the place. Now I've gotten to the point, it took about 300-400 rounds to start getting it dialed in to where the dot was going straight up, straight down. Aaron Cowan talks about embracing the wobble. That dot's going to move a little bit. It is going to move. And what it does is it magnifies your iron sight issues. So, you put the gun out and get it on target, and if you're slightly off target with the iron sights, the dot's really going to magnify that. And it's just a really good diagnostics tool because of that. And what it did is it diagnosed a grip problem with me. For the past 2 years, and I have preached this, I really like the single stacks and the subcompacts. I like the ones with no grip on the bottom because they're so easy to conceal, no pinky I should say, easy to conceal, and so that's the way I would train them constantly. When you chop that grip on say a 26 or a 43 or a Shield, the 365, and that pinky gets used to hanging out underneath, you don't realize how much force you start putting back with that pinky. Now, some people let them float. Well, I didn't. I put the pinky back. And what I noticed when I started putting more and more rounds through the 19 was I was doing that on a 19, and I would dry press out and I would see my dot dip. And so that was a diagnostics part of the dot that I really appreciated. And I got back to a basic fundamental that works really well for me. If you're having trouble with the same thing, give this a try. I put pressure between the web and my middle knuckle. So right here on the web and my middle knuckle, and that is most of the pressure for me. And I know this, it's just I got away from it from shooting the small guns for such a long time. That's most of my pressure, and then I lay these fingers on. They don't squeeze hard for me. I really concentrate on that middle finger to the web, lay these on it, and I think about cupping with this hand. And that's just how I grip a gun to help mitigate recoil, and it seems to work fairly well. I wanted to fill up the web though of my hand. I kept putting it on the gun, and when I draw a pistol from appendix, in my mind I think drive the web, really drive that web into the back of the gun, and I wasn't getting consistent, so I had to make a tweak. I don't like the feel of the back straps. I like the regular Gen 4 size. It's a little smaller than the Gen 3s, which took a little time to get used to, but I like it. But I don't like the back straps. It's too thick and it just didn't feel good. So I modified one. I took one of the OEM, and before anybody says it out there, oh great, Glock perfection, you got to modify it. It's an OEM back strap. All right. So here it is. It's just an OEM back strap that I have cut off, and I dremeled and used white Scotch-Brite on, and that just basically gives me a beaver tail without the thickness of the grip. And man, that feels really good, and it helps me put that pressure where I want it between the middle finger and the web, and it just feels really, really good. And if you have a Gen 4, it costs you nothing because it's already in the case. unless yours didn't come with the back straps. All right, so there's that. That really helped. And what that did also, by getting my grip better, I realized also that my trigger press, sometimes watching the dot, would jump a little bit on me. And you're going to see in some footage coming up here, I only hit 8 out of 10 on the C-Zone silhouette from 50 yards. I'd been hitting 10, occasionally 9. The dot makes distance shooting way easier. I had 2 bad trigger presses. I got a little bit in a hurry, and I threw 2 shots, but I saw it. And that's the cool thing about the dot, is you can see it. So it diagnosed the trigger problem there with the 8 out of 10 at the range, as well as my grip. So the modification has really helped there. I really like this gun. It quickly has become, I'm gonna have to say, probably my favorite carry gun. It just has. I like it. I like the dot. I like the setup. I've had no trouble with the MOS setup. Some people say it's chintzy and it's cheap. Not if you do it right and you use blue Loctite. This thing has not budged. It is rock solid, and the 0 is absolutely still on. So in closing, let's talk about the 0, how I did it, and the distance. Now, I have read where people have zeroed at 10 yards, 15, 25, all kinds of different distances, and there's give and take with any yardage. I ended up, after trying all 3 of those during that 1,000 round period, I ended up zeroing at 7 yards. Call me crazy, but it works, and it works all the way out to 30 yards. Point of aim, point of impact, tiny little groups on paper. It works. Now you might say, why would you need to be good at 30 yards? Well, we can't always choose where gunfights happen. Let's say you're in Costco or Home Depot or Walmart or Lowe's or something like that. Heck, a big grocery store. And some nut is 100 feet, 30 yards down the aisle, and he's either slashing people or he's shooting them. You need to be able to reach out without closing the distance, especially if you had a rifle, and take the guy out. And God forbid it ever happens, but listen, we carry these to help the innocent and to protect our own life. That's why we carry them, for people who can't protect themselves, as well as ourselves and our family. So if some guy's doing bad things to people in one of those stores, you need to reach out there at distance and be able to turn the lights out sometimes. And that's just the way it is. Kind of morbid to consider, but it's a fact, and it's true, and it's why we carry. We carry to protect human life. So this 7-yard 0 has been perfect for me all the way out to 30. The C-Zone silhouette is not a problem hitting that at 50. I'm not exactly sure point of aim, point of impact, the drop, or anything else. I didn't really evaluate it that closely. I wanted to get dialed in at 30 and then work my way back from there and really figure out that point of impact at those other yardages. It's important to know. How did I zero it? I zeroed it on a sandbag. And if you're zeroing a gun without it, I think it's ridiculous. The gun has a certain amount of mechanical accuracy in it built in, okay? It's not perfect, but it's way better than you are. So when you start introducing human error into an absolute 0 of a gun, you're screwing up. I have to question your decision. Now, after I zeroed at 7, and I was going hole in hole at 7, not a big deal. You should with a dot if it's dialed in. Then I stood up at 7 yards free, and I was putting dime-sized groups there with 5 rounds from 7. I backed up to 10 and 15 and 20 and did the same. Now you might have to tweak your windage a little bit if you get back to 15, 20, 30. If it's off from 7, and that's where you want to be really dialed in and give up an inch or 2 at 7 yards, not a big deal. I mean, at 7 yards, if we're off an inch or 2, probably not going to matter that much. Mine was fine though, all the way back to 30. So I'm going to throw up some range footage here if you guys are interested in watching it. My closing thoughts are this: if you're interested in a dot, put your due diligence in. Buy one that you know is going to work, not one that looks cool on Instagram. Thanks for watching this series, guys. Check out the range footage. better way to finish out rounds 991 through 1000 than 50 yards on a C-zone silhouette. See how this goes. Too bad trigger presses, 2 misses. I should do better than 8 out of 10. It actually is easier with the dotted distance, guys. That was trying to get in a hurry. 2 bad trigger presses, and it cost me.